Hey y'all, great to see ya. I see a couple people on the call that either I've worked with before, we're going to be working with soon. Lewis, shout out to you. I think we're about to chat in the next hour or so, so great to see ya. Um, I'm going to be presenting today. Let me go ahead and get my slides going here. Get us started. Alrighty. This Power Lunch episode, as just mentioned, is about how your ideas turn into features in paperless parts, which we're calling from idea to impact. First of all, I'm Hank, and I'm a product manager at Paperless Parts, which means my job, if you've worked with me before, you've heard this little spiel, is to work with you to turn your ideas into the future of paperless parts. And I'm here today specifically doing this talk because Paperless Parts hopes to work with you as more than just a software vendor. We really want to be your partner in growing your organization and improving the efficiency of your shop for the betterment of your business along with ours. Right? We want to be your true partner. And as such, we're going to give you a glimpse into how we actually facilitate that process through our feature development process in Paperless Parts and talk about the ways you can share your ideas. Specifically, we're going to go through this agenda. We'll start with how you can share your ideas, the different methods you can use, and people you can work with. We'll talk about where that feedback goes. So if you ever shared feedback before or want to share feedback, it doesn't go to the void. We'll talk about the life cycle of a project and how you can contribute to it. We'll go over some pro tips for sharing feedback, talk about why great ideas might not become features, and give you a quick demo of a new feature that's been created driven by your feedback. Let's get started with sharing an idea. You've got a great idea like this one. You fill out the same values in a nest, for those of you that do sheet metal nesting in the platform every time, and you wish you could set default values. This is a common request we've heard. You want to share that idea, how do you go about doing it? First and foremost, we have an in-app beacon that you can do this at any time while you're working. It's available from the little help menu that's at the top of every page, specifically that little question circle you're seeing the arrow to here. When you click on that, this will open up our help menu where you can click contact support. And inside contact support, you can select enhancement request like I'm doing here and fill it out with your sense of priority and give us some information that will get us this feedback. This is a really great way to just send a blip of feedback the minute you have that idea, right? Don't hesitate. Don't wait till you might forget it later. While you're working, send us that piece of feedback. And that'll also be helpful because we'll know when you sent it. So we'll get a sense of what you're thinking about as you're doing that. Alternatively, if you're not in front of paperless parts at a given moment, you can also email our support team as well with the same kind of information, specifying that you're looking for a feature or enhancement request and provide that information. Our support team is monitoring this stuff all day. And so they will be sure to route these things to the proper teams to make sure your idea gets heard through the process you'll see in a bit. Alternatively, some shops of you may have a customer success manager or a regular support contact that you work with. And if you do, these folks are the best people for you to go to with your enhancement requests. These folks, including some of the lovely folks on screen who you may already know, are your champion at Paperless Parts. They are people who will frequently share your feedback, advocate for your shop among our internal team, and can also potentially help you find solutions that already exist for the particular feature, problem, or idea that you're looking for. Maybe you didn't know about a new feature that came out. They can let you know about that because they're human. And these people are really, really great listeners. But it's important to remember that they alone cannot affect the product roadmap. So they're great people to share your ideas with, and they will advocate for you, but they also can't make things happen overnight necessarily. But once you share ideas with those people, you might be wondering, where does that feedback actually go? It may feel, if you shared feedback before, that it goes into the void. That's definitely not true. First and foremost, every piece of feedback that we as Paperless Parts receive comes in through our insight collection process. This is a stream of feedback from you as customers of Paperless Parts, as users of Paperless Parts, from our internal team, noticing things that could be improved about the platform, or from anybody else who's getting a sense of the platform, wherever else we show it. We stream all this feedback in one place, and product managers like myself and my colleagues Meg and Alex, who some of you may have also worked with, review every single idea that's submitted and discuss them weekly. So every idea that you actually write to us gets reviewed by a real person and is discussed with the group. Once we review these ideas, we group them into potential feature areas within the platform. What you're seeing over here on the right side of the screen is just a small snippet of the areas of our product, specifically some of the areas that my team and I work on. And so this tree, this hierarchy of features is where we're assigning all of your feedback to. So that nesting default feedback that I mentioned earlier might get assigned under nesting, under sheet nesting, to a specific bucket, which you can see that are grayed out here, but would normally be written, um, that says nesting defaults. And so every idea that's submitted not only gets reviewed and discussed, but is grouped into a key area and collected for future discussion. So maybe you submitted a piece of feedback that we're choosing not to do something with right now for reasons we'll get to in a second. You have to know that it will always be picked up later by somebody when they're looking to work in that area, right? That feedback never gets lost. And specifically, as more ideas come in from both the specific shop who's continuing to express their feedback about a particular area, or many shops who are expressing that their same feedback about the same area, our team is starting to build a key understanding of the themes and relative importance of each part of that potential improvement. Let's say with nesting defaults, folks really say that they're really worried about having to fill in dimensions every single time and really want to work on that aspect. That might tell us that the dimensions are more important than some other area of defaults for specific reasons. And a product manager also owns every single one of these top level items that you're seeing here. Again, these are some of the ones that I work on right now. But for the rest of the platform, there's an actual human who's thinking about your feedback beyond when it gets submitted and discussed that first time around, right? I am constantly going through these lists and absorbing your feedback regularly. And so every time I'm thinking about how we can make the part library better, for example, I jump into this bucket and start to look through the actual feedback that you've given. So we really appreciate when you guys are detailed in what you share. But, and this is the operating and most important part here, you must be wondering how these ideas go from that giant list of feedback to an actual feature. And this is very exciting. For the first time, we're going to give you a little sneak peek into how Paperless Parts product process works and how you can contribute to it. This is a 5-step process, so it'll take me a little bit to get through here, where each phase contains different value, different things we're trying to accomplish, as well as different opportunities for you to contribute. You may have even heard some of these words before if you've worked with us at some parts of this process. So if you have, this should at least give you some insight as to what we were actually doing when we were working together before. The first phase of our product process is discovery. And this is about learning about the particular problem that's being surfaced as feedback about a feature. We're trying to deeply understand manufacturers' experiences and needs with that particular problem or opportunity. I say deeply understand because naturally, as members of Paperless Parts, we are not manufacturers on the shop floor. Many of us actually have experience doing that, but many of us do not. And so it's really important that we spend a lot of time making sure that we understand exactly how you are thinking about problems and experiences, because we are designing solutions for you, not for ourselves. We conduct this discovery over email sometimes, asking questions to y'all, sending out in-app surveys. So anytime you might have gotten a blip for an in-app survey, that's come from us. Or it might even be a 30 to 60 minute one-time or even repeating video call. Some of you on the line may even have some of those scheduled with me right now. Participating in this discovery is a fantastic opportunity to influence the future of the platform. This is the earliest time that you can get in and influence the direction of a particular feature or work in an area. I, for example, right now am working on some work related to machining estimating. And so I'm working with folks who have experience working in machining estimating, and I'm collecting their feedback to feed the entire spread of direction of that features. So any of that early feedback is really great if you're willing to spend the time with us. So particularly in discovery, we are looking to do the following. We're looking to learn more about how your team thinks about processes or concepts. We're looking to walk through some of your files or maybe activity that you do in Paperless Parts or other software. Again, understanding how you do your work, either in our platform or other software, is invaluable to understanding how you think. We might be looking to gather data from you, files, parts, or quotes, to use as examples to either test a feature or to get a sense of how you think in practice on real examples. And most importantly, we're looking to understand the impact of the problem on your shop's time, efficiency, and ultimately your business. And this really is part of that theme of us trying to be your partner in this work, right? We want to understand the impact that delivering something as a feature would actually have in your business, so we can make sure that we're doing the right things that actually impact the health and growth of your company. After discovery, we go into definition. Definition is about translating our understanding of that problem from discovery into designs for effective and accessible product features that use concepts and terminology that make sense to you. This is really important as well, because it's one thing to deeply understand the problem And it's a completely different thing to figure out a solution in software that can deliver a solution to that particular problem. You guys even submit ideas that make it into this process as well. Perhaps we might use one of the ideas that you submitted as a feeding point for the definition of a feature. Specifically during this phase, we might be creating wireframes, which is kind of outline drawings of potential user interfaces. We might be creating high fidelity mockups to get a sense of what this would look like in practice in our software. We might be building prototypes that actually test the functionality and test it with you in a call to see if it would work. And so we might even include additional 30 to 60-minute feedback interviews. In the definition phase, this is another great time to contribute if you have specific eye for details, or if you really care about the number of clicks, for example, or other specific aspects of the user interface. Participating in definition is a great way to make sure that your experience day to day as a user is informed, that not just we've captured a solution to the problem, but that we've captured a solution that feels great to use day in and day out and includes everything that you need to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. I also wanted to use this opportunity to mention our product philosophy when we're defining these features. You may have had conversations with us like this before, or have heard this from any of our team members, but when we are working to build our features, we seek to design features that carefully do a number of things at once. First, we of course want to solve the problem at hand. We want to make sure that we're building a feature that addresses the actual feedback that you've given us. We also want to make sure the feature works for a wide variety of shops. Paperless Parts works with shops across machining and sheet metal and additive manufacturing. And even within that, there's, as you can imagine, a ton of variation as to the number of people at shops, the size of the business, the number of machines, and much more that vary across job shops. Because Paperless Parts serves a wide variety of customers, not only do we want to solve the problem that you've submitted in your feedback, but we also want to make sure that the majority of our customers can benefit from the same kind of benefit we would offer you. Additionally, we want to match reality as much as possible, and this one's really particular. I mentioned the terminology and concepts in the definition phase previously, but it's really important that we make sure that our features match what is actually happening in the real world. A great example of this is Paperless Parts Router, where you define material operations and operations in Paperless Parts. We could have approached, in theory, the costing system of an estimating platform in any number of ways. Perhaps we could have just had a singular cost bucket. Perhaps we could have just had three buckets, a cost for material, a cost for labor, and a cost for add-ons. But that wouldn't really reflect what's actually happening in the way that you're costing parts. You are doing a light amount of process planning when you are costing, deciding what is actually going to happen to cost out parts. By matching the reality of what's actually happening in your costing activity and what's happening on the shop floor, the process planning that happens for the part, we've made a tool that makes it easier for you to translate your own thinking into the software, right? It seems obvious. You might have assumed that it would never be anything else but a router, but each one of those features that matches how you think has been part of a careful and laborious choice to make sure it matches reality and works for you. Another unconventional one in this list is ensuring strong integration with other software. For those of you that have ERP systems that are integrated with Paperless Parts, you know just how much this investment is worth it for you, right? Paperless Parts has unparalleled integration with ERP software that allows us to be used as that front office estimating platform, but still power the rest of your process on the shop floor. Of course, achieving that in the software is no small feat. In every feature, we have to carefully consider how the choices we make can not only be used by the user in the interface, but can also be leveraged by integrations later down the line and can work with the data models involved in your ERP systems. If you don't use an ERP system, you may have integrations with other software, or as your business grows, you may find yourself needing to integrate with other software, and you'll start to find this real valuable. Finally, of course, we need to make sure that the features we build have a practical cost-benefit ratio, right? While we ultimately want to deliver everything that you want out of the platform to make the best estimating experience possible, we're also a business with a finite amount of resources. And so every choice we make have to carefully consider what is best to do now and how can we create maximal benefit for you and for our organization to grow to continue to benefit you whilst keeping everything on track, right? So finding the features that provide maximal benefit for an appropriate cost at the right time. After definition, we move into delivery, right? We've decided what this feature is going to look like. Now we have to build it. And this building process is, of course, a significant portion of the time of this work, right? Our engineers are hard at work building new features all the time. And that building does not involve just creating the feature and matching the designs that we've come up with in definition, but also involves an extensive QA testing process, right? We like to keep paperless parts a largely bug-free experience. And to do that, we have to be really thorough in our testing in advance. Of course, there are always things that will slip between the cracks, but this QA testing process ensures that you get high quality features the majority of the time, and is why the platform works as reliably as it does for all hours of the night. Our engineers are hard at work making sure that this is true all the time. And even simple features, even things that you feel are quick to describe, easy to figure out what the interface would look like, you can imagine might be simple to develop, could still be complex to implement in delivery for our engineers, because software development is a complex affair. And depending on the area that the feature is in, it may require addressing previous gaps in the solution to get to this solution, or addressing technical debt. So don't underestimate how much work it takes to deliver even the simplest solution. Next up, this is an optional part of our process that we're trying to exercise more and more these days, is beta testing. When we are building particularly complex new features or implementing major changes to our user interface, we conduct beta testing. This will involve granting you, as users and your shop, access to experimental new interfaces and features in trade for your continuous feedback and comfortability with changes underfoot. Some of you on this call might be participating in our quote setup beta right now, which is launching in the middle of February to all users in the next step of this process. And this is a great opportunity for us to make sure that our features are actually delivering the expected value before we bring them to everybody, and make sure that all the kinks have been ironed out and all the bugs have been caught, right? So this process is a really great way for us to gather feedback. And it's also a great way for you as a shop to get on the cutting edge of manufacturing estimating software, right? By taking some of these features, you can get access to some really cool new technology, but it also means accepting a little bit of risk in the process. And finally, after all that process is complete, we move into rollout, where we bring some brand new functionality to all of our users like yourself. This may require configuration, which requires some coordination with our implementation teams and your shop admins, or it could be overnight. It all depends, right? Sometimes these things may be even completed in phases to make sure that you're being successful with our new features and don't feel that your experience is changing negatively. It all depends on the specific feature at play. So altogether, that is a 5-step process from discovery through rollout that altogether can take somewhere between 50 and 100 hours. It may involve up to 5 or more people in that process, between product managers like myself, who are guiding discovery and definition and overseeing the rest, engineers who are working on the delivery, a designer who might be involved in defining the visuals of the feature, and a whole bunch of internal company stakeholders involved in the rollout and beta testing. So don't underestimate, even again, for the smallest feature, single features, there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of time, right? We'd love to deliver things to you fast, but if there's 50 to 100 hours in it every time, we've got to make sure that what we do counts. So with this in mind, I also wanted to share some pro tips for sharing feedback that will help accelerate this process, right? As I showed before, a lot of this process up front is learning from y'all. And so if you're able to share feedback with a little bit of extra context, it really goes a long way to make sure folks like myself can absorb that feedback and use it to cut down that 50 to 100 hours towards the 50 end if possible. So here are 5 tips that I'd recommend for sharing with your feedback to help us learn more that are hopefully easy for you to answer while you're thinking about your feedback. First and foremost, specifying the goal that you're hoping to achieve with a particular feature request or concern, right? Often you may have a really great idea for a feature, but when we dig into it as a team, we realize that what you're really getting at is a workaround for a bigger, more systemic issue or problem. And if we can solve that systemic issue for you, you may not need the workaround that we're talking about. So if you specify that goal, it's much easier for us to suss out what's the root of the problem and how to solve it best for you in ways you might not be thinking about. In this example right here, somebody might be asking for a bulk deep copy action because they need to up revision an entire quote, right? Rather than a bulk action, we might create a workflow to do that. Not necessarily a real example, just made that one up for effect. We also would love if you could specify any terminology you use to describe something new to the platform. Perhaps in this example, you might be looking for a way to track the expected volume of parts over the course of a year, which some of you may call estimated annual usage. Real example, right? Specifying the term that you use, although it seems obvious, with your feedback, make sure that we know what to ask about with you and with other customers the next time it gets brought up, And also make sure, again, that we use the right terminology in the platform to make an experience that you both understand and love. We also would appreciate if you could give us any evidence for the frequency of the problem, right? Often the feedback that you give us is because you're experiencing something a lot of the time, or it feels urgent or dire for you. And so making sure that you give us some numbers that we can use to understand how you feel about it, such as the percent of parts affected, quotes affected, percent of files you run into, the time, or more. These could be percents or numbers. For example, here, this feedback saying that 50% of their quotes require nesting and use the exact same values for nesting, right? This tells us immediately that we're going to be impacting 50% of this person's work if you could introduce nesting defaults. So it's very valuable to know that kind of frequency. And we hope that that kind of thought is at your fingertips, even if it's just an estimate. Next up, specifying the impact, which is somewhat similar to frequency of a problem. If we were to deliver a solution for you to the problem, what would that mean in terms of benefit for you, right? Maybe you spend a lot of time doing something that would be cut out by a given feature, right? In this example, they are claiming that 10 hours per person are spent weekly. 7 of those are used in entering nesting defaults, right? So we know we're cutting out 7 hours per person at this job by delivering nesting defaults. And so that's a really helpful way for us to understand just how valuable that feature is and prioritize it accordingly among the work that we do. And finally, as an added bonus, now that you've heard about our product process before, let us know where you might be willing to participate in that process. If you're willing to participate in discovery and early conversations, where there might not even be a lot of benefit for you at that moment, you're just willing to share your feedback to help us learn and improve and see if the feature would get somewhere in the future. Or in the definition or later phases, maybe you're willing to test some feature in beta testing or be willing to look at mockups, right? Tell us which kind of feedback you're willing to provide so that we can contact you and use, again, your feedback to accelerate the process even more so. We hope that this is a quick guide, and if you can, take a picture of this page or come back to this slide deck later and grab some of these references and use those to construct your feedback. We're really excited to read feedback that includes this. Some of you already do a fantastic job of spelling out the story for us, and this always helps us make your features happen faster. However, with all of this in mind, there are still going to be some cases where great ideas don't become features. It's inevitable. We're an organization with finite resources. And so I want to describe a little bit how we're thinking about things and why it's going to make your product better faster. So here's a list of reasons why great ideas don't become features. A common one is that the impact is better if delivered along with a different set of functionality. Commonly, we receive requests for like, wow, we'd love to deliver impact in that area. However, if we accompany it with this larger future feature that's scheduled for some later date, we can create 3 times as much impact with the same rough level of effort, right? If every project takes at least 50 hours, setting those 50 hours on the bigger effort that delivers more together is going to be more successful for delivering value, even if it delivers it a little later than you would have hoped. It could also be that because we're prioritizing other features that you've also asked for or would love. We maintain a product roadmap at all times that is our agreement internally as to what we will deliver over time. It does change and evolve as we go throughout the year, but often we like to disclose parts of that we feel confident will be achieved on time. And so you might have even heard about it in one of these power lunches about our product roadmap, right? We prioritize the features on that roadmap very carefully around maximizing that impact, right? So even though you might be asking for a feature that would really impact you in one area, you might find that our roadmap contains features that you also would feel are equally impactful. A great example of this is some of the quote setup features that are coming soon, right? We tactfully chose over the last while to spend a lot of time honing the quote setup experience because we know that is impactful to you and all of our users and will help you flow more quotes through the software faster, win more work, and grow your business, right? So even if you didn't get the feature that you wanted, we hope that the other improvements that we're working on are still going to feel exciting and impactful for your overall experience and the growth of your business. It could also just be simply that the cost benefit isn't strong enough, right? Perhaps the feedback you give us tells us that it affects you 10% of the time. And even if it's really painful that 10% of the time, if that 50 hours could be spent on something that's going to impact you 40, 50, 60, 80% of the time, it's more likely that we're going to want to focus on that kind of thing, right? Because it has more benefit to you more of the time. And that applies not just for your individual feedback, but also our feedback across customers, right? We want to make sure that we are benefiting all of our customers, because if you were a customer who was left out of a set of benefits, you might feel that we weren't doing anything for your experience. So really balancing the spread of our work across our user base. It also might be that we have more learning to do before we can figure out how to solve that problem, right? Sometimes manufacturing and especially estimating can be deeply complex. Those of you who work on machining estimating know in particular that there are so many permutations involved in thinking about it. And so it takes time for us to both learn about it and synthesize that feedback into the right features. And it may take us months or longer than that 100 hours that I mentioned per feature to actually learn about things. And so that's why, again, I shared those techniques for including feedback, because these things can really help accelerate that learning and make sure that we don't get stuck learning how to solve that problem. And rarely, technology just can't make your idea happen yet, right? With the rise of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and such these days, the future looks bright for what technology can accomplish. But it's not a silver bullet. That technology is not a silver bullet, nor are the silver bullet technologies for a number of problems in the manufacturing estimating space. One common one is those of you who work with prints might often wish that that print could be turned into a model. We found that right now there's a ceiling on the technology that's even possible to make that come to life, given the huge spread of possible prints, right? There's just a technological ceiling that exists that, of course, we want to make progress on, but is not always possible at the given moment. And so sometimes we'll acknowledge that a piece of feedback can't go anywhere yet. But most importantly, out of all of this, despite these reasons, your great ideas are always great. Most of the time, it's actually that it's not about if we're going to do that idea, it's just about when. Because we're an organization with finite resources, we prioritize the maximum impact. It's going to be the case that we can't always deliver the best thing for you at the given moment, but instead that you're going to get something beneficial for your whole experience over time, right? The platform that you pay for improves day after day, week after week, year after year. And so we hope that that improvement over time will still make you excited to use the platform and still benefit you and help you grow your business, even if the particular thing that you're looking for can't happen right now. But like I highlighted earlier in this call, we're always storing your ideas. And so any piece of feedback that you leave is going to come back later and become that great idea when it's appropriate, given all the other factors at play. And so again, we really appreciate that you're willing to share this feedback with us, because it means that when we get to do it, we are more informed and deliver a solution that works for you and for all of our customers. With all that in mind, I just wanted to use our last bit of time here to show off nesting defaults. I gave you an example where customers were giving feedback about this during the session, and we just launched this feature to all of our users. Those of you who are not sheet metal manufacturers may not be leveraging this interface, and that's okay. This is for sheet metal manufacturing to help folks optimize the placement of parts on their sheets. Within our sheet metal nesting module, you now have this new button here for updating defaults, which takes you to a corresponding settings page. From here, users can update the sheet metal nesting defaults so that those values get filled in every time. Let's say that I know I'm always going to be nesting on 96 by 120 sheets, right? I can specify that right within this module and maybe specify some other nest settings like my particular buffers and save those changes. And now the next time that I go to nest in the nesting module, those values will be filled in by default. This is a common feature feedback request we got over the last year, and we combed through that feedback in the tools that I showed you, reviewed what was most important to accomplish, and found a solution that allowed us to spend that 50 to 100 hours in the right way and deliver value at hopefully a valuable time. As we're going into 2024, we're really, really excited that you can use nesting defaults to make your nesting experience just a lot faster and remove that repetitive data entry of the previous version. That's it for my talk. I'm now going to go ahead and answer some questions.
That was great, Hank. It might even be helpful to put that how to submit feedback slide up. We had some folks that joined closer to the end. One question that came in is, you said the easiest way to make sure that you can participate in discovery around a new feature is to make that clear that you're willing to participate when you submit feedback. I think it's also important for people to understand what they're committing to when they say that. So can you maybe give a rough idea of what people could expect from a time commitment if they participate in feature discovery?
Absolutely, great question, Jess. it's a little bit different for each phase. So I'll just kind of briefly go through each of the phases with this last slide here, right? In discovery, this might involve anything from an email to a 30-minute call to an hour call, or potentially a repeating call, right? You can specify what time you're willing to spend as well. And you tell us that kind of feedback, right? Maybe you're willing to take one call, or you're willing to spend a lot of time with us if it's important to you. So the ask may vary, but you can also specify what you're looking for. Similar thing is true in definition, although these tend to be a single 30-minute to an hour call where we're just looking to show you our progress against figuring out the problem, gauge your feedback at one moment in time. And with beta testing, this may involve continual calls as well, in which we are giving you features, asking you to use those features, and then checking in with you to see that progress. Or it might just involve using the features over time so we can monitor that work behind the scenes. So again, the time commitment may vary a little bit, and you can specify what you're willing to participate in or not. We'll also ask you what we're looking for when we would reach out to you based on your feedback. I think that should hopefully answer that question. Again, a little bit variable because it depends on the feature. But a great example is right now, I'm spending about an hour every other week with some shops working on a particular discovery effort. That's a good example of when it can get its most intense.
That's super helpful, Hank. Thanks for that additional commentary there. It doesn't look like we have any other questions today. We can give it just another minute if anyone has some last minute questions that they want to throw into the Q&A using that button down at the bottom of the screen. Otherwise, you're always welcome to reach out to any of us here at Paperless Parts with questions. There is Hank's direct contact information. So if you come up with a question after we conclude today, please feel free to send those in directly. And with that, it looks like we don't have any other questions. So Hank, thanks again for a fantastic presentation. Appreciate your time, and thanks to everyone for joining today. We'll distribute this recording, and we look forward to seeing all of you again next month for our continuing Power Lunch series.
Thanks, all. One thing to add as well, I'm going to throw a link in the chat for an article that covers some of the same things that I covered here. So if you're looking to share some more of this content or understand more about how we build features, it's a great additional resource to check out. And thanks.